Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Cloud Wars Live, where we're exploring today's digital revolution and how it's changed every aspect of our lives. And in the past 9 weeks, we've also been weaving in that other revolution that's also touched all of us, quite deeply with the COVID-19 pandemic. For today's show, we've got an interesting opportunity to speak with a top HR executive. Mignonette Silot-Chang is the VP of HR at RSA, the security experts. And Mignonette is going to have a chance to tell us a little bit about what it's like working through not just a high-paced business in the world at all times, but also especially during the times of this pandemic. So Mignonette, thanks very much for joining us here on Cloud Wars Live.
Thank you. Thank you. A pleasure to be here, Bob.
Great. Mignonette, so, you've got these dual things going on. First of all, at a successful, high-growing technology company these days, everything with the digital revolution hitting, and then you get the COVID-19 pandemic comes sort of crashing in. Tell us a little bit about how, as an HR leader, this whole pandemic has affected the way you and your colleagues go about the process of employee engagement.
Bob, we really are under unprecedented times here, and I'm quite inspired and impressed about how our employees have displayed incredible resilience and have been able to adapt very quickly across the globe. And as an HR leader, this disruption really does introduce quite a unique challenge. And how do you keep your employees engaged when we're not physically together on a day-to-day basis? And at RSA, it's meant we've had to heavily rely on our executives and our leaders to lead with empathy and patience and err on the side of over communicating to stay in touch with our team members, on a regular basis. We've had to embrace video conferencing and other technologies so that we can stay connected. And as it doesn't always work perfectly every time. But certainly it has shown how important it is that our IT infrastructure is critical to be able to enable our employee engagement, especially during a time like this. And again, going back to our employees being resilient, I'm just delighted with what I'm seeing and how they're being so creative in actually going out of their way to stay connected. I've participated the last couple of months. I've participated in some virtual birthday celebrations and happy hours and just wacky themes like who can bring the most creative face mask, to start our meeting. It's nice to be able to start our meetings with a few laughs. But and I think after all this, it will bring us closer together than before. But there is a flip side to this as well, and I'm sure others can relate. It's a really trying time, and we're trying to figure out a lot of things still, and we're learning that we also have to help our team members find a way to be able to turn it off, right? Fostering a good mental health during this stressful period is really important, and it's not just the stress of the work and doing it differently, but it's also the stress of the other roles that we play during this time. Caregivers, elderly caregivers. We have team members with family members who have lost their jobs or they're fighting the virus. And so, really encouraging our team members to take the needed time off and not to feel, the pressure of having to always be connected at all hours just because the technology allows us to do that. So, the challenge here is that we look at employee engagement differently. We have to take a much more holistic approach, truly listen to our employees and what they're telling us. And from an organization perspective, we need to be agile and adapt very quickly. It's the only way that we're gonna be able to maintain employee engagement during this time.
I mean, that's fascinating what you said there, because on the one hand, RSA, like every company, is trying now to figure out how do I get my team connected so that we can achieve the work we have. But you also brought out the point at the other end of that, which is, how do we make sure that there's a time for people to be able to turn it off? And, the old phrase about don't take your work home with you it's somewhat impossible in these times.
It's all meshed together now, right? There isn't this fine line where we say we keep work at work and home at home. It doesn't exist anymore. And so, and as an organization, we have to be okay with that. And I think as an RSA organization, we've done quite a good job at accepting the new norm, you know, accepting the fact that there will be family members interrupting in the middle of a conference call, or that we get to see some of their furry friends. It really is an interesting time and interesting with regards to how the organization, the workforce is reacting to it so incredibly well.
And Mignonette, like you said, it's touching everybody. I know several weeks ago, as this was starting to hit, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, you know, one of the biggest and most influential companies in the world, he said that one of the lessons he's had to learn is I have to learn how to share home office time with my 2 teenage daughters. And he said, we have to work out schedules in advance for who's on, you know, in front of the camera at certain times. So really remarkable. Do you think there will be some lessons that RSA learns during this crazy time that it will carry forward into its future way of doing business?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a great opportunity. You know, times like this, I always say it's a great opportunity for our leadership to shine, right? And leadership is going to be key. You know, leading again through empathy, patience, understanding, communicating. Now, these will all go a very, very long way in building an engaged workforce. You know, companies are going to come out of this in one of 2 ways. Some of them will, you know, those who embraced the new norm will come out of it closer and more collaborative, and others will be more fractured because they didn't lean in the opportunity. So I suspect that the organizations who are able to move forward quickly after this disruption will be those that really handled it with lots of thought and care during this time. Also, you know, organizations who embrace those tools that are available to foster collaboration and greater connectedness, like Slack or Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever else it is. It's really critical that, you know, all employees at all levels are provided with that access. And organizations need to really think, you know, long-term about the decisions that they make today, Bob. You know, nobody really has a playbook on how we navigate through this. So, you know, we need to be thoughtful and we must remain informed and again, we have to be agile and adapt very quickly to whatever the new norm will be.
So Mignonette, with what you've said there, you talk about, you know, a learning organization, the need for leadership to step up, the sense of humility and patience and openness and communication. Are you finding that there are some advantages to having this remote workforce model?
Yes, absolutely. You know, when you think about this, we're kind of in the largest work from home experiment ever, right? Companies have thought about the idea of eliminating the physical workplaces for years now. And we're all being forced to test that concept. And at RSA, we've been champions of the flexible work from home model for years now. And it's made us a key differentiator in our industry. It's really made a difference in our ability to attract and retain our employees, as well as, you know, really contribute to our diversity and inclusion practices. You know, it's probably the reason why our team members transition to remote working with ease and with very little friction, which then, of course, allows us to be able to care for our customers as they go through this chaotic period. As an organization, I believe we'll come out of this, you know, with a much greater sense of connectedness. And for those organizations who are handling the transition well, they'll end up with a high, you know, ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score, out of all of this.
So, Mignonette, it's interesting, right, is what you've been talking about, and you hear this from all sorts of companies and all sorts of industries, that as this time hit, the remote working and all that, and this whole different challenge for businesses and for employees, so many companies immediately turn to the head of HR and say, take us through this. What do we do? How do we, you know, which way do we go here? Be the leader. Do you have a chance to talk with other HR executives? And can you share a little bit of some of the sort of common ideas that are coming out of those conversations?
So the executives that I'm, as you may already know, RSA belongs to the family of Dell Technologies, and so that's a huge organization. And it's funny you should ask that question, but 3 times a week, just the HR executives are meeting specifically to discuss how we're progressing along this COVID-19 situation. In addition to that, the global leader of human resources at Dell Technologies meets with us on a weekly basis. And in addition to that, the executives within the business are meeting on a weekly basis. So you could just see how, it's not just HR executives that are caring for this. It's really given us the opportunity to come together as an organization. It's wonderful to be a part of that, Bob. And so I'm sure there's a lot of organizations going through the same thing. Really, we've been so internally focused here, but we do have pockets in the organization who are looking after and making sure that we have the latest and greatest information externally so that we can see how, what our position needs to be for our organization.
No, I mean, Mignonette, that's great. I wondered as well, through that, it sounds like an ideal operating environment in this model that you put together, the weekly calls with some of your peers, with the head of Dell HR, across the whole corporation, and then with some of the executive leadership as well, because these are times when, we sort of think we're getting accustomed to this new normal, but things are changing so quickly. So I wonder if in that context, are there some best practices that you've learned and would be able to share with everyone?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the leadership is really, this is an opportunity for them to shine, and they really are stepping up in every way. So that's really a key thing here. Embracing those tools, the technologies that help foster employee engagement is a key thing. And being thoughtful about the decisions we make today and the impact it will have long term. Those are the key pieces of best practices and advice that I'm sharing with everyone.
Yeah. And, Mignonette, I wondered, and I know this is in that category of, capital B, capital Q, big questions. Here's one for you. What, given the experience you've had over the last 9 weeks, any insights into what the future of work is going to turn out to be?
So, that is a big question, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I certainly have an opinion. Yeah. Remote work will likely become more of a standard practice, especially for the high-tech industry. I don't think it'll ever be 100% remote, Bob, but we'll see more companies embracing the notion of flexible workplace, and this will become a standard practice. I also think that, how organizations think about conducting business will evolve too. The days of traveling week after week for in-person meetings or conferences will dramatically decrease, and organizations are going to re-examine if in-person meetings are required, if video conferencing tools are just as productive. And so, the return on investment is really going to be something that they're going to be highly considering going forward. So, just in closing, there's this need for face-to-face interaction. I don't think that'll ever change, but we will be more thoughtful about how we spend our time. And I think this period of remote work will give us the opportunity we needed to shape the future of work. And the key will be finding the right balance.
So could you tell me too, you've talked about, the future of work overall. Now, what about for the future of the VP of HR? I know that every company is different in some ways, but do you have thoughts about how an HR leader in a corporation, how your job is going to be different into the future?
I don't think our jobs will be any different than any other jobs that really have to consider the new norm. I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of it, living a little bit ahead of it, considering I am a remote employee, a full-time remote employee. I work out of my home office in Toronto, but I am accountable for all of global HR for RSA. And even though our headquarters is based out of Bedford, Massachusetts, I'm able to and accepted in being able to do my work from home here. There was a time before COVID that I did a lot of traveling. I think post-COVID, we'll be rethinking some of that. And personally, I will welcome those changes.
Okay, Mignonette, thank you so much for your time here today to explain some of the journey that RSA has been through in these remarkable last 9 weeks that everybody's been on, and really enjoyed having you here on Cloud Wars Live. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And folks, thanks to all of you for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. We look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay generous. We'll see you soon.